Have you used the Antigravity IDE yet? Let me give you one reason why you might want to at least test it. However, I can't say that there's many more reasons. At the moment, it is a nice IDE in the sense that it's a fork of Windsurf, and I'm a big fan of Windsurf. They are, in fact, a fork of VS Code, so if you don't like VS Code, then you probably won't like either Antigravity or Windsurf. The biggest problems, well, I'm going to just touch on this before I move on to the actual good part. The biggest problem is that the Gemini models, for whatever reason, are just not performing. They performed well whenever they were released, so I mean Gemini 3, it was launched there sort of mid-December, and it was working really well. The single sort of first prompt was great, it did do a lot of work, and it produced a nice app. So the sort of first shot would be amazing, and then afterwards it was just kind of a decent model, and you could get work done. I'm finding it to be lazier and lazier, and I do mean Gemini 3 and now 3.1 on the high version. So this might be sort of high or higher reasoning, I suppose. They've got high mode and low mode, but both are somewhat unusable. They feel a bit lazy, and I end up just using the Flash model, which, despite it not being supposedly as smart, it somehow seems to be just as smart, and it gets things done. It's very strange. So I don't want to dwell too much on the problems of Antigravity. The software is basically fine. It's basically VS Code. I don't like it as much as Windsurf. I've got a chat bar on the right side where I've been working, and the output there inside Antigravity is just not as nice as Windsurf. So Windsurf is better, just generally overall. You do have access to some Claude, some of the Claude models, Opus and Sonnet. That is kind of nice. So if you're only paying, say, $20 a month, roughly, it's nice to get a bit of access, but it's not a lot of access. So to some extent, there's not really a lot of reason to be paying for Google's AI. It is bundled within their overall subscription model. And I know I'm drifting here from what I really want to talk about, which is about the graphics that you can see in front of you, because it actually still has a nice image generation model. This Nano Banana 2, Nano Banana Pro, whatever it is, I'm able to generate some nice assets for the games I've been building. So inside Google's subscription to Google One, you get some amount of storage for your Gmail drive, for your G drive. So if you have lots of pictures or PDFs or whatever, then the storage connected to your email goes from however many gigabytes that you get for free to 2 terabytes or whatever it is, some bigger number for about $20 a month. Plus you get some amount of AI usage. However, in all of that, it just feels like Google are kind of cutting away at the useful parts of the subscription. And so yes, you do get access to AI, but you don't seem to get a lot of access. Or that you do get access, but then it's like the models are lazier, and that's just, it's not very good. If you want to try to create apps, then that's not very good. So I have kind of gone off on a tangent there, and I want to bring it back in. What I want to talk to you here is I want to talk to you about the images that you can produce inside of Antigravity. I think that this is one of the main selling points at the moment. So inside the chat bar, you got a chat bot, as you do within any of these IDEs, and you can ask in natural language to generate an image, and in the background it will connect with the API that it needs to connect with, and you don't need to worry about any of the details. It will go and hit the right model on the Google side, and it will generate an image, as you can see here. And I think the quality is quite nice. Is it perfect? No. But is it good? Yes. And it's good enough for what I've been building. Of course, if you zoom right in, you will see that it gets a bit blurry. But you have to really, really be looking. And for me, I'm never looking at that level of detail, and I don't think the players of my games would be either. However, it did capture the aesthetic that I actually wanted for my game. One of the things to be wary about is that the API that's used within Antigravity, within the IDE, there are limits on that per, I think it's like per 4 hours, and then it resets. You also have a weekly limit as well. So if you hit the weekly limit at some point, then you are done for the week and you can't send any more. And that's sort of a hard cap which is kind of separate from the 4-hour limits that you get. I think it was either last week or the week before I generated something close to 150 to 160 images. So I was able to generate a lot of the sort of quality that you see in front of you. So in the game that I created, Dungeon GPT, you can see here, which is a campsite, and this is one of the encounters, I think, if I remember correctly, an abandoned campsite, and this is one of the encounters inside Dungeon GPT, which is an AI-powered dungeon master. The one before was one of the inside shots of the of a building. So this was the guild hall, and that's how it looks. Something else which you may have seen in another video, which is, say, like the blacksmith. But let me show you some of the other things that I created. For example, this one here is a dryad encounter. So you have a sort of somewhat attractive female who is one of these sort of tree spirits or some sort of spirit entity within the forest. We also have this one here, which is a rune with cultists, which is obviously a bit more dark and sinister, but I thought the aesthetic was nice. I thought this kind of really adds some mood to the game, and so if you come across this encounter, then having an image as opposed to just text will really help to build the atmosphere of the game, and that's what I was aiming for. And this was all generated basically for free inside of the Antigravity software. Yes, now I say free, but of course it was already included within the subscription price, and you probably have to pay at a paid tier in order to get some amount of usage. It's just kind of how it is. In addition to that, what I also want to show you, I got a few more images that I've opened up. I also produced some items. Now, this is not a transparent background, which is annoying. I haven't been able to figure that out, how to get a transparent background. However, it's a dark background, and for the purpose of what I'm using, which is an inventory for my players, I think this is fine. They'll see a small version of this, and then if they click on it, they click on the item in the inventory, then it opens up with a bigger image inside, a pop-up basically. So the quality doesn't need to be perfect, but it should be good, and it should be fitting with the theme of the game, which it does. And these are just different items that you can find in the game that are just there, of varying sort of values or whatever. It's nice to have some random items as well as some which are a bit more meaningful. The game isn't finished; it is a little bit rough in places, but I think these look nice, and I think this is something which just really adds to the atmosphere of the game. So, as I'm saying, this was all done in Antigravity. There is a usage limit for every 4 hours for the week, but you can ask in natural language. I actually generated batches of images at a time. I built up a document here that I'll show you, where I said, okay, let's create another batch. And so this was batch 26. There was 4 items. One was a medical journal, a medical kit, runes map fragment, and one called Nature's Blessing. And so the prompts are all quite similar. They all have a similar sort of description. They all talk about having a dark background and then sort of professional 2D game asset. And so this is for the items. And each time that I made a batch, I would then say to the LLM, okay, create the next batch, and it knows to look into the document to grab the right descriptions and then go and generate those 4 images and then bring it back to your computer. And then eventually I ask to convert from PNG to WebP. WebP is a bit better in terms of the amount of space that it takes up. They're much lighter, and sometimes they're sort of 10% of the original size. And there isn't really much reduction in quality, which is nice. And all of this can be automated, at least to the extent that I'm sort of asking for these batches of items, and then I say also convert them, and that's basically all understood. Maybe the very first time you have to tell it, and then the later times that you do it, within the same conversation thread, it will know to do it. And it's really nice that happens. So here on Linux, I'm using it's FFmpeg, or FFmpeg, whatever, to do the conversion, and it's been great. There's not really been any problems. Another thing that I'll bring up here is that I had Google create this batch script. So at one point I wanted to generate more images, but I'd hit my weekly limit, And so I asked it to use an API key, which means I would end up paying more for those additional images. They were not included in my subscription tier. They're obviously more expensive, but I was just really keen to get a whole bunch of images created, done, and out the door. And I created this script. And so if I wanted to generate images during that time, then I could ask again in natural language to run this script, which then parses my API key and then generates the images. Here it says Gemini 3 Pro images. This is something that it seemed to work. I tried other things, looking at the documentation. The other things didn't quite work. I believe this hits Nano Banana one way or other anyway. I'm not sure if it's Nano Banana Pro or not. Someone who knows Google better than I do could probably tell you. But it does seem to be a good model, and it is giving me comparable output. If you go to Gemini, the web app, so in your browser, then you'll get slightly different quality, slightly different proportions, and you'll also get the watermark. Whereas when you generate this here from the API, you'll notice that there's no watermark down in the bottom right corner, which is really nice. Now, I'm showing you cartoons, basically. These are like drawings, a sort of a painted style, perhaps. You can also ask for more realistic or sort of photographic. That wasn't what I wanted in what I was building, but it may be what you would want in whatever you're building. So just keep that in mind whenever I'm showing you these things, that the quality can vary, and the realism that you want can also vary depending on what you require and what you ask for. Hopefully that was useful, and I think that's one of the main reasons that Antigravity might be worth using. It's nice that it has access to Claude, but it's not a lot of access. The Gemini models can be used, but they're not great. So it's kind of difficult to recommend Antigravity beyond that, and to recommend even the Gemini models, because it feels like Google is optimizing for scale and having a lot of users, being able to do something with AI, but not being at the very sort of forefront and being the best with AI in a way that is, if you use Claude, then you know that you'll be getting some of the best results in terms of generating code. And I just don't feel that with Gemini. Maybe with Codex. Well, I think that's everything that I want to say in this video. If you enjoy these videos about game development with AI, or text generation with AI, or just kind of my general journey of learning things about AI and the things that I publish, then please subscribe, comment and send likes. I do appreciate all the likes that I have been getting so far, and obviously I would appreciate some more comments to try and help steer some of the content, and just to kind of know what you like. Or even if you want to learn something, then maybe you can drop some questions and I'll see if I can help you. So thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next video.